when the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
What's happening, people? It's G. We are back. England match day 1, Euro 2024 is soon upon us. It is soon upon us. Of course, at the time of this recording, the Euros hasn't actually started. The first game will be, in my time, in my world, in my universe, the first game is tonight. So that's going to be very, very interesting to watch. Of course, England starting their campaign against Serbia. Guys, please make sure you smash a like, share, and subscribe to the damn channel. It's going to be an interesting tournament. I've mentioned this before in regards to, I just think that football is going through an interesting time at this, at this juncture that we're, currently at when it comes to football. I feel like, right now football is just in this kind of space. And of course, we've got the Euros, we've got the Copa America, and then we've got the leagues, starting back up again, transfer window and all that, all that kind of good stuff. But we are here today, England, first match preview against Serbia. I think it's going to be a tough game. I'll be honest, just looking, on the face of it, I do think that for England, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky to be able to navigate against the Serbs, if I'm being honest with you. Not to say that they can't do it. And of course, you're going to need to be able to beat these kind of teams, who are going to be tricky to beat. And also they've got some really, really good players, in their team. Now, I'm going to show you guys a predicted kind of lineup, for Serbia moving forward. So obviously, like I said, this is just more of a prediction. I don't know what Serbia are going to do. I don't know what team that they're going to necessarily play, in terms of injuries and stuff like that. But, when I'm taking a look, at their team, and again, I'm not going to sit here and try and wax lyrical about Serbia in terms of necessarily how much they play. I've done a bit of research into kind of their style of play. They are a team who do like to press. They are a team who, will try and overload the middle of the park, to be able to press high, so that of course that then leaves spaces in behind for England. But when we're just looking at the kind of makeup, in terms of the formation of their team, of course, most of us will know players like Tadic, Vlahovic, Mitrovic, Lucic, very good player, Savic as well. Zivkovic, I think like he's a very good player in their team, and of course Milenkovic in there as well. They've got some really good players. They've got some really, really, good players in their team. But I think one of the players that I looked at, and I feel that if he does play, and again, if he's fit enough to play in the game, was actually, Dusan Tadic. Now, of course, formerly played for, Southampton. Very, very, and obviously plays for Ajax. Very, very good player. Very, very good player. And a very tricky player. 35 years of age now, actually, to be fair. I don't know, actually, if he's still at Ajax, but played for Ajax, shall I say. Whether he's still there or not, I'm not too sure. Haven't seen him play much recently, but in the last few years that I have seen, someone like a Tadic play, and thinking back obviously to how good he was, especially when Ajax were at a peak, with the Lits and players of that kind of ilk. When I think about it, and when I think about him, he could be very key. Now, 35 years of age, as I mentioned before, he's not quick. He's not going to be that type of player, but he is a smart player. He will try and play in between the lines and almost become a little bit of their floater, a little bit of a floater. Now, what that might mean for England in terms of trying to pick up someone like him, I don't know. I feel like with Serbia, again, just through a little bit of the clips that I've seen of them in their last few games, watching them, they can become compact when they need to be. That's the kind of vibe that I get with them. They can be a compact team. They can, of course, drop in when they need to be and then almost form like a 5, almost 6 at the back. And then they've got their midfield who will then sit in front of that defense when they need them to do that. So that's then going to allow players like your Tadic, Vlahovic, and Mitrovic, again, if they start, to be able to, almost work their magic and kind of use their own individual quality, because Serbia will have, in my opinion, a very, very good So of course, as I mentioned before, they are a team who will try to potentially overload that middle of the park. And you can see here with the numbers that they have got in the middle of that park, that might be an area of frustration potentially for England. That's where it's going to be interesting to see the kind of team that Gareth Southgate puts out for this first game in terms of trying to combat that. Because if you get overrun in the middle, we know what that's like. You get overrun in the middle, it then creates gaps in other areas of the pitch. So I feel like that's going to be an interesting area. I would love to see. Well, we're going to see it anyway, but I'm going to be intrigued to see, how Gareth Southgate tries to combat that. Who is he going to put in the middle of the park? Obviously, I've got my 11 in terms of who I would, realistically want to see play and, etc., etc. But like I said, it's just going to be interesting to see who Gareth decides to kind of play in that middle of the park. Again, with someone with players like Vlahovic and Mitrovic, two intelligent enough players. They know their strengths. Now, someone like Vlahovic, I feel like is someone who will try to drop deep a little bit more to pick up the ball in certain spaces, kind of in that attacking, midfield space, but also he's good at making these late runs into the box. Now you can see the winger here who's got the ball. You can see players like Vlahovic, Mitrovic getting into the box and making those certain runs, whether it be to the near post, to the far post. Again, I just think that from these wide areas, again, intrigued to see how England combat that because it's all well and good if you're able to nullify whatever's going on in the wide areas and that player on Serbia's team isn't having the greatest of games, then it might not necessarily be too much of a problem in my personal opinion, because then they're not going to be able to get the ball into the box, right? But if they are, it's all about tracking the runners. Defensively, England will need to be switched on to these kind of moves. And again, we know what Mitrovic is like in the air with the centre backs that are available right now for England. It's not like they've got Harry Maguire in there, unless he plays potentially could actually go with maybe a Lewis Dunk. Actually, that's actually a thought that's just popped up into my mind. Could try and go with that to be able to combat someone like a Mitrovic, just to nullify that threat, because Mitrovic isn't going to run in behind. He's not quick. That's not his game. He's more ball to feet. He will hold off defenders and then lay it off for someone else to, do whatever. And then he'll get into the box very, very slowly. But once he's in the box, this guy is a menace. So you have to be so, so careful, with someone, like a Mitrovic. And I feel like that's where England are going to just need to be a little bit careful, in my personal opinion. And again, when we're taking, a look now at, potentially where England may be able to hurt a team like Serbia, I'm thinking in behind. Now, as I mentioned before about the way that Serbia do like to play, in terms of overloading the middle, at times, potentially, if that press from Serbia isn't 100%, you might be left in Serbia might be left in these kind of situations, in these situations where a quick 1-2, and I think that's where England could do really well is if the football is quick, you'll be able to in theory, if the football is quick, I feel like they'll then be able to, bypass that press. And when you've got runners, and again, depending on who they decide to play on the wings and, in the midfield and stuff like that, if you've got the right runners, and again, we know that someone like Harry Kane's going to try and drop deep and etc. etc. But as long as he's got runners, if you can play the link, if you can do the link up really fast, England can be in. Saka's, the Gordons, and people of that kind of ilk, they can be in at this Serbia defense and the Serbia team. Now, I did say before they are defensively solid. Now, if England, who I feel like that's what they're going to potentially do, if England kind of revert to slow, methodical, and stuff like that, that Serbia press might become an issue. I feel like that could potentially become an issue if they're moving the ball around too slowly, because I feel like Serbia would kind of want that, kind of thing. Now, there's obviously the flip side of it, which is the full sense of security, which is, yeah, we're going to play it slowly, but it's because we want you to try and jump out. Because if you jump out, we're going to play 1-2 in and around you, and then we get into the situations that I showed before, which is now we're in behind, now we're in your defense, and I think that's going to be the kind of battle that England are going to have. Now, that might mean, of course, potentially playing maybe a Trent Alexander-Arnold who can, with a pass, release someone when there is a bit of space, if we're able to get that. Will that be the kind of game? Will that be England's kind of game when you're up against someone who's so compact and can sit in a 5/6, at the back? Is that going to work necessarily? That type of game. Again, I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here. I'm just throwing ideas out there for for you guys to kind of let me know in terms of what you think. But when I'm looking at key players for England, that then brings me on to the players that I'm going to speak about. As I said before, and again, I will show you guys, of course, my team that I would potentially put out there for the game. But when I'm looking at it on the face of it, if you play Trent, which I think he's going to do anyway, I think Trent will play. Where he plays, I'm assuming it's going to be in midfield. Um, that might not be where I play him, but if it's going to be midfield, it's going to be in midfield, right? You're going to play him in there for the passing ability. Of course you are. That he's able to with that magical right foot, he's able to get someone in behind potentially. But if we don't have that space to do so, that's where I look at it and I think to myself, that might become a bit of an issue. Then having Trent in that middle of the park, because then he's not going to be used to the best of his ability, kind of thing. And again, this is why I say that might not even I can't really put that on Trent though, because I'll more put that potentially on Gareth Southgate again, depending on how the game kind of pans out. But I would then be looking at Gareth Southgate to then say, hey, we're going to need to quicken up the pace here. It can't be slow and methodical and this. No, it needs to be Trent has got runners. Trent has got people running in behind. Bang, he'll be able to pick them out. He's got the ability to do so. Utilize that. Have the players with the movement, because once you get the movement, Trent will find that. And if England have the right movement, they'll be able, in my opinion, to be able to get on in the Serbia defense. But again, it all just kind of depends, because otherwise, like I said, it will just be null void having someone like a Trent in there, because then what realistically is he going to be there to do? Because that another midfielder who's probably more defensively secure could be able to do for England. Another player that I looked at was Phil Foden. Again, like I said, I'll show you my team in a second. But when I'm looking at if he does play potentially, I just think maybe, of course, he's not going to play off the right. That's going to be Saka's position. No, not a problem. I just think having a Phil Foden in there who's used to playing in this kind of, obviously it's Pep Guardiola's team, so there's like a level of freedom that you've kind of got within there, but it's done within the confinements of this is your area kind of thing. Be free, but this is the area that I want you to be free in. These are the areas that I want you to be quite disciplined in. That's where I feel like Phil Foden, who is tactically, and of course, because he plays for Pep Guardiola, because he plays for Manchester City, you need to be tactically switched on. I feel like he'll be able to do that type of role. Now, this isn't Pep Guardiola and this isn't Manchester City. It's Gareth Southgate and it's England, which I totally understand. But ultimately, I think you can use some of the styles and tactics that Pep Guardiola uses, because I do think you have quite a few of the pieces in there. Obviously, albeit you don't have a, would I say, quote unquote, Bernardo Silva potentially in the squad, but you've got your KDB in Trent Alexander-Arnold. You've already got Phil Foden. You've already got Carl Walker, John Stones. You've got some of those Manchester City players within that team anyway. I feel like you'll be able to replicate that Gordon Doku-like in terms of a out-and-out winger, so to speak, who can, beat his man, running behind and whatever. Hasn't got the skills and stuff like that that a Doku has, but just in that similar mold. Not, of course, they're not the same player, but they're in that kind of similar bracket in terms of what the type of winger they are. Like Gordon isn't a Jack Grealish type of winger, so to speak. But Pep's obviously got both kinds, and I feel like we've got those pieces now. In then Harry Kane, who will then, of course, as always, drop deep as he always loves to do into false DM positions. That's where the runners and the movement is going to be so key for England. That's always been my problem with England watching them, is that all of this stuff is it's like static movement, which is, I don't know if oxymoron is the right word, but it's kind of like it's like a negative. It's like trying to like prove a negative. Sometimes I'm like, why is there static movement? You know what I mean? Like, why are players, or why are players so what's the right word? Why are players so basic in their movement, so to speak? It should be a lot more fluid than this. You've got players who know how to, maneuver themselves in that final third. Of course, you're going to have Saka, who's going to be touchline winger. We'll try and cut in maybe at times, but he's going to be that touchline winger. Gordon can kind of play as an inverted winger / inside forward, if you needed him to calm. Then you've got Harry Kane, who's going to, as I said, continue to do that drop in deep. Phil Foden, guess what? You running behind. You getting behind. I trust him more in on goal than I do Cole Palmer, if I'm being totally honest with you, because I feel like he's more used to that. he's more used to that, getting in on goal. Cole Palmer's good, by the way. He is really, really good, and he was close to making my team. But yeah, I just feel like I'd feel a lot more comfortable with that. So to the team now, England's defense, I'll be honest with you, I think it's kind of crap. um I'm not confident with the defense, no matter who you played. Now, obviously, I've gone with Kieran Trippier at left back, and because I just think he's just going to play there anyway. Trent at right back, with Walker and Stones in the middle. The reason why I've gone for Walker and Stones is that I just feel like with international football, with football in general, but with international football, I feel like there needs to be a level of partnership within that, like, especially at centre back as well. I feel like you just need to have had this partnership going for quite a while. Walker and Stones are not a partnership, but they do know each other really well because they play for Manchester City and the way that they do play over there. I just think that having those two together with Trent, who's going to do the whole invert potentially thing or whatever, or move into the midfield, however you want to kind of put it, he's going to move into that area anyway. I just think having someone like Carl Walker next to him, who's the fastest defender that we have in the entire team, to be able to cover Trent if he does obviously do go on these kind of ventures, allows Trent to be able to do what he really wants to do, which is go into the middle. I just think it's different being in midfield and actually then and someone who inverts. They're two different things. They are completely two different things. Like it's two different job roles within itself. So I feel like from what everybody keeps saying about just put him in midfield, I'm like, you could do that. I'm not saying Gareth, and I'm not saying Gareth won't do that. You can do that. It could prove to be absolutely successful. But if we're just going on everything we've seen thus far, I don't know what. Like for me, I'm like, nah, I'm more comfortable him if he's gonna play a right back, just let him invert if that's what you want him to do. But then you're going to need someone next to him who's quick enough and able enough to be able to cover on that right hand side. Someone who can go out to right back and push out to that area, comfortable in that area, unlike say a Kanate who looks like he's out of sorts when he does get into these kind of areas. Then cool. Now I'm not saying Carl Walker's the best defender in the world, whatever. No, it's just about someone who's used to being in those areas. He's comfortable in those areas. He doesn't look out of place when he's in those kind of areas. If you then want Trent Alexander-Arnold to push into that midfield, to play in and alongside Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, and in that midfield area. The reason why I haven't gone with Jude in at number 10 is because I think Foden's a better number 10 than Jude. I just feel like from what you would potentially need from a number 10, I feel like Foden can work that position really well. Obviously, Jude has played this kind of, I don't even know. I can't even say false nine. It's like false midfield. Kind of. We're just making up words now anyway. Whatever that role is, I just think that that role obviously works at Real Madrid. And again, I'm not saying that he can't potentially do that if Gareth Cho chooses for him to play in that position. But I would much rather have Phil Foden in the 10 position, floating in and around. If you then push Trent into the midfield area to play alongside Declan Rice, it allows Jude Bellingham to kind of do that. But I feel like I want Jude in the middle of the park to be able to be almost like a release, to be someone who can get the ball and maybe dribble out of certain situations, get the ball, find the pass and keep it moving kind of thing. Of course, Declan Rice can do that as well. He's someone who can break up play, but he'll be more the defensive one, out of the two. And you give not Jude a free role. I'm not really saying that. That's not what I'm trying to allude to, so to speak. But you're giving Jude just more of a central midfielder role, box to box midfielder, and you're kind of good to go. Declan Rice, I'm more like, I don't need you to be box to box. I just need you to kind of break up play. I need you to kind of chill in your zone and stay there. If I'm being totally, unless we're losing the game and we need you to push forward, then fair enough that will, then do your thing. But I'm more concerned with allowing Jude to be able to do that, but still being disciplined enough, just because I feel that Serbia are going to be very disciplined in that team and we need discipline within the team. I don't need too many free role players to just do whatever. And again, Trent will be in there as well to be able to potentially help out with Declan Rice. And you almost are potentially going to have like a quote unquote box midfield, so to speak, once that happens, because you'll have the three at the back there in Walker, Stones, and Trippier. You'll have your Trent and Declan Rice at the base of that, and then you have your Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham almost in front of those two as the attacking midfielders. But again, it will switch as the game kind of ebbs and flows, depending on the game state and etc. etc. Right wing, cool. Up front, cool. Left wing, could play Eze there potentially, but I would go with Gordon just because of the pace and because you got Trent Alexander-Arnold playing those crossfield passes that he loves to do in behind, not a problem. I feel like that for me is the kind of team that I would want to go with. Again, I can see very many different scenarios with this. I can see many different things in terms of how Gareth Southgate wants to play it, but it will all just depend on the type of game he's trying to play. Ultimately, tournament football, you're just trying to get the win, right? You don't really care about anything else. So he might just look at it from that kind of basis and say, as long as we can not lose, then we've got a base to kind of work with from there. And then I can bring on whoever I need to bring on to change the game and then, take it from there. But ultimately, I would say score wise, I will go with England will edge it 2-1. I think they will edge it 2-1. That's what I'm going with for the time being. I think England will edge it 2-1. Just, just. Obviously, it'll be their first match. Of course, I know Serbia are going to be up for it as well. England, I'm hoping, will be up for it. So it's going to be an interesting game, but I'm going to go with just England to edge it 2-1. Guys, let me know, of course, in the comment section what you guys think in terms of your lineups, in terms of score predictions and things like that. Let me know, of course, what you guys think. As I said before, I'm recording this on the Friday, so lineup will probably be different, potentially, with injuries and etc. etc. So apologies if that is the case, but of course, we are quite busy. I will be back Monday morning with my match reaction for the game. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. We out.